Hello, everyone. I am pleased to be here with Mary Jane James, Executive Director of the Sexual Assault Centre for Edmonton, or SACE. Thank you for coming today, Mary Jane. This afternoon, I will table Bill 85, the Student First Act. This important legislation would ensure safety for students, confidence for parents, and accountability for teachers. It would do so by shining a light on how teachers and teacher leaders, such as principals and superintendents, are disciplined in rare instances of professional misconduct. Why? Because we believe parents who put their faith in Alberta's education system should have confidence that their children are safe when they go to school. I want to begin by thanking educators right across this province. The overwhelming majority of teachers and teacher leaders are dedicated professionals who care very deeply for their students, and they go above and beyond every day for them. Indeed, Alberta's education system has excellent teachers and teacher leaders who are highly valued and crucial to ensuring the continued success of our students. And I want to be very clear that this legislation is not about teachers, it is about students. It is about ensuring our education system here in Alberta puts students first. In fact, very little will change for most of Alberta's 55,000 certificated teachers currently working in our schools. But when disciplinary matters do arise, the process should be timely and it should be transparent. The Students First Act is the first step in improving this process for our students. This legislation would enhance student safety, increase transparency through public reporting, and improve oversight and timeliness of disciplinary matters. It will also bring Alberta in line with other jurisdictions and other provinces, and the teaching profession in line with other professional organizations in the province. Parents rightly have high expectations for the people working within our education system every day with their children. As a mother myself, I strongly believe that parents deserve to know if their child's teacher has been found guilty of unprofessional conduct or professional incompetence. If passed, Bill 85 would create an online database of information about Alberta certificated teachers and teacher leaders. This public online database would list the professional standing of Alberta's teachers and teacher leaders dating back to 1954 and the professional status of their certificates. 1954 is the oldest information on certificates available in Alberta records, which is why this time frame was selected. And parents would be able to view both a summary and a full copy of disciplinary decisions for suspended and cancelled teaching certificates dating back all the way to 1990. Also, if passed, Alberta would join other Canadian jurisdictions in sharing this level of detail, such as the online registry, which occurs in British Columbia, or the public listing of disciplinary decisions maintained by the Ontario College of Teachers, and such as the public registry associated with Saskatchewan's Professional Teachers Regulatory Body. An online database would be easily accessible, searchable, and comprehensive. It would give parents the information they need to give them more confidence sending their children to school. To ensure students and other staff are protected, the Students First Act would also require school authorities to obtain a police information check or a criminal record check with a vulnerable sector check when hiring a teacher or teacher leader, and every 5 years onward while the individual remains employed by a school authority. These types of checks are mandatory for many positions that work with children, like coaches or nonprofit service providers. It is an important tool to ensure that those working with our children are vetted and do not have a criminal record. While most Alberta school authorities typically request a criminal record check already, this statutory requirement would make that practice consistent and mandatory right across the province. Early Childhood Service Operators, or ECS operators, established under the Education Act who employ certificated teachers would also be included. Once the legislation comes into force, teachers and teacher leaders would have 16 months to provide an up-to-date check. This time frame is intended to help ensure that employing school authorities and police agencies across Alberta are not overwhelmed with requests, and ensure that no disruption for other Albertans seeking similar checks. We don't want it to be disruptive in any way, shape, or form. We're also speeding up the disciplinary process for serious criminal offenses. If a teacher or teacher leader is convicted of a serious offense under the Criminal Code of Canada that threatens student safety or public interest, the Students First Act will fast-track the process to cancel the individual's teaching certificate. I think most parents would agree the moment someone is convicted in a court of law of a serious crime, they have no business teaching our children in our schools. Fast-tracking this process would also ensure that victims are not re-traumatized by having to go through an additional lengthy hearing. The Students First Act would also introduce a requirement for the Alberta Teachers Association to notify Alberta Education of all complaints filed against teachers and teacher leaders who are members of their association, and keep Alberta Education informed at various stages of the complaint process. This would assure accountability by providing government access to the most up-to-date information on all disciplinary issues. It would allow Alberta Education through the registrar to maintain awareness of the number, the nature, and the status of complaints. It would also align with requirements set out in the College of Alberta School Superintendents Act that was recently passed. While the registrar would be advised of all complaints as they are received by the ATA and CAS, only those that result in the imposition of a suspension or cancellation of a teacher certification would be reported to the public, on the public database. The Students First Act would also improve the efficiency of disciplinary processes by streamlining the Alberta Teachers Association disciplinary committee structure and the process of naming public members to committees. This also will align with the association's disciplinary committee structure This will also align with the structure that we have in place currently with the CAS Act and the department's practice review of teachers and teacher leaders regulation. Finally, once a case has been heard and a decision rendered, the Students First Act would reduce the window for judicial review of disciplinary decisions from 6 months to 60 days. This is another instance where Alberta lags behind other Canadian provinces. Ensuring these cases are closed in a timely manner is critical for victims and for their families. Again, as I said earlier, the vast majority of teachers across our province do absolutely incredible work working with our students day in and day out. They are just amazing, amazing people. I want to thank our incredible educators right across the province for the work they do every day and who entered into their profession to make a positive impact in the lives of their students. However, in the rare instances where this is not the case, I am so proud to introduce legislation that will put students first by making their safety and security the cornerstone of Alberta's education system. Those we entrust to educate and care for our children must be held to the highest standards of professional and ethical conducts. That is what Alberta parents expect, it is what students deserve, and it is what both of them will get with the Students First Act, and I'm so honored to be the minister to bring it forward. Thank you, and I will now ask Mary Jane James to come to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today with Minister LaGrange as she introduces this really important legislation that I believe will go a long way to keeping our students safe in their classrooms. I want to reiterate first what Minister LaGrange did say about the teaching profession and the fact that it is filled with excellent, committed, and passionate educators who go into the classroom each and every day intent on providing a top-notch learning environment for our students, one where the students can feel safe, empowered, and cared for. The Sexual Assault Centre of Edmonton exists to support individuals of all ages and genders who have been impacted by sexual violence, a crime that impacts 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 3 boys at some point in their lifetime, most typically before the age of 18. Anytime we have the opportunity to re-examine processes to ensure that survivors feel safe to come forward and to feel that they will be believed and supported, we need to take that opportunity very seriously. In terms of the Students First Act that is being discussed today, I firmly believe that making criminal record and vulnerable sector checks mandatory when hiring, and again every 5 years, is an important tool to ensure that those working with children are vetted appropriately to make sure that our children are not potentially being placed in harm's way. I was really actually surprised to learn that this was not already mandatory across the province, as it is with so many other institutions and organizations that involve working with, coaching, or teaching children. Needless to say, I am very happy to see this proposed change in process. When incidents of misconduct do happen, and particularly when those incidents involve a student, it is so important for the victims and their families to have the confidence that these cases are being dealt with transparently and in an acceptable, timely manner. Victims and their families need to know that what happened to them is being taken very seriously. I also believe very strongly that those who have been convicted of serious crimes related to violence against children and students should never have the opportunity to be in a classroom with kids again. Victims should not have to be re-traumatized by going through a lengthy hearing process after a criminal trial has already taken place. Fast-tracking the removal of those teaching certificates would ensure that victims and their families are not further harmed by a long, drawn-out, and quite frankly, unnecessary process. I was really pleased to see the creation of a public online registry as well. This registry will provide increased transparency and ensure public confidence by sharing information on the professional standing of a teacher or teacher leader. Under this registry, the identity of victims and other colleagues who may have been involved in disciplinary matters related to the incident in question will not be disclosed publicly. Protecting the identity and well-being of victims and their families is of the utmost importance, and this needs to be balanced with the public's right to know about disciplinary cases. I believe this legislation strikes the right balance of protecting victims while allowing the public to have access to crucial information. Protecting students is a very serious responsibility, one that involves every single one of us as adults. I fully support this important step that is being taken by this government to do their part and put students and their families first. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Mary Jane. We are now going to move over to the Q&A portion of the press conference. Please limit yourself to 1 question and 1 follow-up. If you are here in person, please line up at the microphone and ensure you state your name and outlet. We'll start today here in the room. Go ahead.
Thank Thank you. Shayla Skalski, CTV News. Question for the minister. I'm just hoping you can speak a little bit further to the motivation for this bill. Are you hearing an increase in concerns among parents about what's going on in the classroom? Are we seeing an increase in the number of suspensions among Alberta teachers? And if you could provide numbers, if so.
Certainly. As many of you know, I was a trustee for 11 and a half years prior to coming forward as an MLA and being elected as an MLA and further becoming Minister of Education. When I first became Minister of Education and in my time as a trustee, I saw cases arise and I was concerned. And as I got further into my ministry, I saw more cases crossing my desk. I do not see that the numbers are increasing. As I said earlier, the vast majority of teachers are just amazing, wonderful human beings that are there for the right reason. They're there to look after the students. We entrust our children to their care. But in rare circumstances, there are cases where there is professional misconduct and also professional incompetency. And we need to take that seriously. We need to be able to make that a transparent process where everyone can see the results of that process. So I'm not seeing numbers increasing. They are still fairly few and far between, but even one case is one case too many.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess just in terms of the changing of the structure for the ATA disciplinary committee, I guess can you speak to why more members of the public are needed? I guess it could be seen as taking power away from ATA and teachers in making those decisions.
Actually, the composition of the committees themselves will not change. It's just those people that are being appointed to the panel. There will be a panel rather than individual committees. So it's really about streamlining the process. It's not about changing the composition. There will still be ATA members that are put forward and elected or put onto that committee by the Alberta Teachers Association themselves. The public members will be appointed by the ministry.
Go ahead.
Hi, Janet French from the CBC. So speaking of increased transparency, I note that there's really no plans to increase the level of information that's made public before a teacher is convicted of misconduct. But there's a long, as you know, lengthy process before that happens. Teachers face charges, there are hearings that are supposed to be public. So why not include things in this database like dates, times, names of teachers who are facing charges of misconduct, what charges they face, and also there seems to be a delay, right? So we're looking at potentially 90 to 120 days at a minimum before the information would be updated to the website from that finding of misconduct. So why not fill in some of those gaps of transparency here?
Well, as I said earlier, this is the first step. I am absolutely open to having further conversations with the Alberta Teachers Association and CAS, the College of Alberta School Superintendents, to make it even more robust. But at this point in time, we are looking to take that first step to increase transparency. We've never had a public registry. We've never been able to see that public-facing document up and running. So this will bring us in line with other jurisdictions, and it is a good, solid first step.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so just thinking about some of the perspectives of people within your party, you know, there are some who would have wanted you to take this even further, you know, potentially split the ATA up. And I'm not suggesting this is a good or a bad thing, but splitting the ATA into two functions of regulatory and representative association or union. So why did your government not decide to go that route at this time?
As I just indicated, we're improving the process. And when it comes to student safety, as you know, Janet, I'm a mother of 7 and I'm a grandmother of 7. I'm very invested in ensuring that our students are safe. And, ultimately nothing's off the table, but at this point in time, this is what we are pursuing to improve the system and the processes that we have. And really being that, very transparent and accountable to the public.
All right, that's all for questions in the room. And I understand there are no questions in the phone queue, so that concludes today's press conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.